had a feeling that something strange was going on. We immediately pulled alongside the ship. What we saw left us in shock. Such a thing was impossible. According to the theory, everything began with Albert Einstein's crazy ideas. Einstein was working on the unified field theory, and one version of this theory suggested that by fixing an energy current at certain angles using a large electrical generator, light could be bent around an object, making it completely invisible. The United States saw this as an opportunity and provided Einstein with every possible resource to make it happen. It is claimed that Nikola Tesla was chosen to assist him in this experiment. Thus, two mad scientists might have been on the verge of achieving a miracle. The United States was preparing to enter World War I. Preparations were underway. They wanted to transport aid to their allies across the Atlantic Ocean and protect them, but the Atlantic was practically a hell for them. German U-boats, submarines, were destroying nearly 2 ships every day along with their crews. In addition to this, the Germans' secret experiments had become a major mystery, spreading by word of mouth among many countries. Following these reports, U.S. military forces began dozens of experiments in the now famous Area 51 in order to win the war. All of these experiments were called the Rainbow Project. The main purpose of the project, in simple terms, was to stay one step ahead of enemy nations. For example, in one of these experiments, they created ghost planes. Thanks to these extraordinary aircraft, which could not be detected by radar at the time, they gained significant advantages in the war. However, according to theory, they conducted another unbelievable experiment, one with disastrous consequences. The project was called the Philadelphia Experiment. It was allegedly carried out on October 28, 1943. In this experiment, they aimed to build ships that could not be detected by the enemy, just like the ghost planes. By making their naval ships invisible to enemy radar, the U.S. Navy hoped to gain superiority at sea, as well as on land during World War I. Moreover, the goal was not only invisibility but also teleporting the ship from one place to another. This experiment was far more ambitious and nearly impossible compared to the technology used in ghost planes. What drove them to attempt this was the claim that Einstein had conducted a teleportation experiment based on his unified field theory. Einstein had been working on these studies since 1925, publishing many of them in a physics journal. Whether he succeeded or not is unknown, but there was someone who believed he did. The person who brought this experiment to the world's attention held a master's degree in astronomy and was a writer and researcher who wrote about UFOs. In 1950, this person received 2 letters from a retired sailor named Carlos Miguel. In the letters, Carlos claimed that he had witnessed a reconnaissance ship being teleported into another dimension, and that Albert Einstein's research had been used by the United States to teleport a military destroyer. All preparations for the experiment were completed, and it was ready to begin. According to the project, ships would suddenly appear at their desired locations without being detected by enemy radar, scientifically defined as optical invisibility. The ship used in the experiment was the USS Eldridge, hull number DE-173, with a crew of 104. It was classified as a destroyer escort. According to a witness, 2 generators with a power of 75 kilowatts were installed beneath the forward gun turrets of the ship. From there, 4 magnetic beams would be projected across the deck. These refracted beams and radio waves would surround the ship, rendering it invisible to enemy observers. The USS Eldridge was stationed slightly offshore in front of the Philadelphia Naval Yard when the experiment began. On the morning of June 22, 1943, at 9 a.m., power was supplied to the generators. A magnetic field began to form.
Then, a greenish mist enveloped the ship, and the USS Eldridge completely disappeared. For a moment I could only see the ship's anchor, then it vanished as well. There was neither mist nor the USS Eldridge left. We were staring at an empty sea. The high-ranking officers and scientists aboard our ship watched this unbelievable success with fear, terror, and excitement, holding their breath. The ship and its crew had vanished both from radar and before our eyes. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. 15 minutes later, the order was given and the generators were shut down. At first, nothing happened. Then the green mist reappeared and the USS Eldridge began to materialize again. The ship had inexplicably teleported to the Norfolk Naval Base, 640 kilometers away. 15 minutes later, it was brought back.
As the noise faded, we sensed that something was terribly wrong. We immediately approached the ship. What we saw shocked us. Such a thing seemed impossible. Some crew members were fused into the ship's metal plates after the teleportation. It was an unbelievable sight. Others never returned at all. The experiment appeared successful, but due to its horrific consequences, the project was terminated. Allegedly, several important figures were involved in the experiment. One of them was Albert Einstein, as mentioned earlier. Others included Dr. John von Neumann and Nikola Tesla. These were truly significant names with radical ideas. According to theory, after the experiment yielded disastrous results, none of them took responsibility and refused to continue working on it. Approximately 12 years later, in 1955, Carlos Miguel sent another letter to Dr. Morris Jessup. What becomes interesting starts from here. Jessup asked Carlos to send another letter with more details. A second letter followed, in which Carlos stated that he was willing to undergo hypnosis, truth serum, or any method necessary to prove what he was saying. 9 years passed. In April 1959, Jessup called his doctor friend Mason Valentine and told him that he had reached definitive conclusions about the experiment and wanted to meet the next day. They planned to meet for dinner on the evening of April 20th, but that dinner never took place. That night, Dr. Jessup was found dead in his car in a park in Miami. According to the police report, he had committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning, and the notes in question were nowhere to be found. This incident inevitably cast doubt on the reality of the entire process. After Jessup's death, Charles Burles said in an interview, "I believe the Philadelphia experiment cannot be explained by known or conventional methods. Some scientists believe that the fundamental structure of the atom is not composed of matter particles, but electromagnetic fields. This involves extremely complex interactions of energy fields. Intentionally creating extraordinary magnetic conditions could change the phase of matter both physically and biologically. In this case, the time factor, part of a matter-time energy dimension similar to our reality but not an independent entity, becomes distorted. In short, this experiment is possible." At this point, some questions may come to mind. For example, why wasn't this experiment conducted on a smaller ship? Of course, we cannot be sure that it wasn't. Those attempting to teleport a ship may have tested smaller objects or unmanned vessels first. This experiment represents the final stage, and because it failed, it was shelved. There may also be many reasons why they never disclosed this alleged failed experiment. International trust in the United States, explanations owed to the families of deceased crew members, and the political and military reputation of the U.S. following such a failure. No country could risk these consequences. However, it must be said that aside from the statements of a few alleged witnesses, there is no concrete evidence regarding this experiment.
The Naval Historical Training Archives stated that there are no records confirming the event or documenting any success by the Navy. Unfortunately, despite the passage of 80 years, the truth remains unknown. There are claims, but no proof. A mysterious death and detailed accounts raise suspicion. Perhaps one day the time will come for a top-secret file to be opened and the darkness to be illuminated. See you in another mystery. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for even more mysterious information.